Hello, everybody. My name is Taylor, and I'm the Director of Operations, and I'm on the French horn and composition and piano faculty for ZTunes Music School. And we are so excited to host Atlanta Symphony Orchestra cellist Dona Vellek as our clinician today. Ms. Vellek has been a member of the ASO since 1981. She is an active coach for the Atlanta Symphony Youth Orchestra and an affiliate artist with Emory University. She's an active chamber musician and private teacher, as well as being a member of the symphony. For today's clinic, we will stay on mute while Ms. Vellek works through the GMEA High School cello audition excerpts. I suggest you have your copy of the excerpt nearby and have a pencil and take notes as she works through it. I think, Ms. Vellek, you said you have it split up into sections, which you'll tell us about. And without further ado, let's get started.
Hello, everybody. I'm Donna. We're here today to see if we can do something creative with Schroeder Etude number 64. As you can see, it is nothing but solid 16th notes and no dynamics in sight. So, looking at the audition form of what the judges are going to be looking for on the prepared etude, that there's three categories here. Tone quality, we can talk about that. Intonation, yes. Musical effect, well, that's where we need to get creative. So keep your pencils handy. Near the end of this, I'm going to suggest some dynamics just, to make it musical. You can invent your own as long as you don't do them every single bar so it gets a little bit over the top. But we can try all of these things today with Schroeder 64. To make it easier, divide this into sections. I will play the first section slowly so we can talk about some things there. The second section will begin 3 lines from the bottom, second bar, where the treble clef mark is. Section 3 will start on the second page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the top, the very last bar. It's basically a recap of what the beginning sounds like for a bit. So it should sound familiar by the time you get there. Excuse me. Okay, so what are we looking for with this one? Probably things like left-hand endurance, because it goes and goes and goes. Flexibility, smooth bow changes, so that it sounds continuous. There's no dynamics, like I said, but we will create some. When you're playing something like this, you want to try not to squeeze with your thumb behind the cello. It's tempting when we have things that are moving quickly and repetitive to want to grab the cello, in which case your hand will get very tired. You may find that this is one of those etudes where you have to practice it a page at a time until you build up enough endurance to play it all the way through for your audition. So the very first bars, let me suggest that we're going to start slower so you can hear it. I do not want to change any of the bowings except for the very first 2 bars. They should all be on a down bow. The third bar will start up, down. And for myself, when I'm learning a new etude or a new piece, I mark bowings every so often. So if I get off or stop to fix a problem that I'm working on, I know what bow to start back on. And the reason for these bowings is because of the dynamics that I'm going to eventually suggest to you. I think this bowing makes the whole thing a little easier. So we're going to forget the quarter note equals 110 for the moment. We're just going to talk about some flexibility. So you'll hear that I'm keeping my bow very in the middle of the fingerboard here. I'm not on the fingerboard, I'm not on the bridge, I'm somewhere in the middle of the cello so that I can use a slower bow. If you find yourself running out of bow a lot, then you're probably playing too close to the fingerboard. So move your bow further south, we say. When you get to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th bar, you'll see a lot of first finger shifts. This happens later on in this etude. So you have things like So every 4 notes you're shifting. One way to practice this is to only do the downbeats. So that I know where my first finger is going to slide. And I make those slides the same speed as I'm playing. Da, ya, da. I don't try to push my tempo to make a shift happen. Don't try to shift too quickly. Once you get this, then you can start adding all the other notes. And so on. Basically, I'm starting this whole passage fairly full sound, so you could call it forte if you like. If you follow me past there to line 1, 2, 3, the 4th line, you see on the 2nd bar there's an E natural with some sharps. I'm starting there. Now I'm going to diminuendo and start this softer. The open C passage, 5th line down, 1st bar. Open C, we're going to start it less. Crescendo. Now, this starts at section 2. When you get to section 2, this is all of our treble clef scenario. Some of you may be more familiar with tenor clef, some of you may be not. Those of you who've taken piano, this is no big deal. But we need to get these notes very, very comfortable. Again, when you're doing these on the A string here, because we're going to go past this 4th position area where the bout of the cello is, I'm going to suggest that for this entire section 2 in treble clef, keep your left arm up a little bit higher. If you keep it down here, then when you have to shift up, it's a big effort, and then you bring your arm down and you go back. And when that happens, we lose time. It's harder for the fingers to reach those extensions. So we're going to start with the lifting the left arm up a bit. And again, in treble clef in section 2, we're going to just do the main downbeats first so you can hear where the shifts are. It's the first bar is all D's and all C's. Now, 2 lines from the bottom, the notes start moving again. So you get the idea. That's what I would start with, because if your shifts are not clean, this whole passage is going to be very hard to understand. So starting on the moving notes, the other thing to notice here is that some of these positions, every 4 notes that you shift on, some are what we call closed hand, where all the fingers are right next to each other in half-step shape. And then there are some that are extensions. When we do extensions, I'm sure you all know this, the big extension that we use is between our 1st and our 2nd finger. We don't do extensions between 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 ever. I don't. I have small hands. I can't do that anyway. But I think most cello teachers will tell you extensions are always done between 1 and 2 because it's an easier stretch for our hand. So the very first notes, 2 lines from the bottom, 1st page, 1st bar, close, extend. So when I go up, when I play 1st finger, I'm thinking, where is 3? It's way up there. It's big. It's a big reach for my small hand. Another extension. Another. That's a closed one. Now you shift back a 3rd to an extension. That's a tricky one. If you need to mark a bracket or a symbol underneath there so you know there's a skip in that bar, that might be helpful. It has another skip, very last bar of page 1. There's another skip there between the 1st and the 2nd beats, same thing. Sometimes we don't see them coming because we think all these notes are next door to each other when we shift, and this one is not. He's an exception. So let's go back. 2 lines from the bottom, page 1. Extend. Relax, extend, relax, extend. Here's another one of those, skip a third. So if you need to mark extension over yours, I usually mark with an EXT or an abbreviation that might work for you. These are your parts, mark them up. Whatever you see coming at you with all these notes going by, you don't have a whole note to relax and think for a second. It just keeps going and going and going. So I always mark in some bowings here and there. I mark a lot of up bows in here so I know what bar I'm supposed to be on the up bow in case I got off somewhere. But this also gives us room to be more expressive. Now, in this section too, move my paper over here. I also think some dynamics where we do crescendos and diminuendos from one bar to the next is musical, which is why we're doing the bowing that we're doing. First two bars connected down bow at the beginning of the piece. The third bar starts up, and then it's up, down, up, down, up, down for the whole rest of the piece. So when you're on this section two, now I would think of a crescendo going to the top notes would be musical and nice. And relax. Oh, sorry. Now we start a new area where we're going to start a new volume here. This is page 2, second line, first bar. Hairpins. As the notes go up, crescendo. Now right here, you see a Roman numeral 2 there? That does not mean go to the A string and use some different fingering. A Roman numeral 2 under there means D string, not second position, which some exercise books have in there. I'm thinking of a batch of books that I used to teach out of as well. It means D string. So you're going to go up on your first finger here on the D string, all of it. So that entire passage there is on the D string. This is all kind of one dynamic level in this neighborhood until you get to. And then here I would think it'd be nice to make a diminuendo into the recap. And then start over. Now we're in section 3. Now, here's that hairpin idea again, all within the same bar this time. I'm overdoing it so you can hear it. Start less. Now start piano from here, crescendo all from there to the end. Oh, sorry. Skip, that's a skip. Yeah, that's a hard one from a D to a G sharp. But it is a string crossing, so if you're careful with your bow, you might be able to just squeak that finger in there. I don't think there's a really better fingering here. Unless you want to put a 2 and then hop to the 4. That's up to you. If you have small hands, maybe. And then the last 2 lines plus 1 bar. Then I kind of come down a little bit volume-wise, but not a lot yet. Again, here's that D string. It's not an A string, it's a D string. And you might want to put a little retard there and vibrato on the last note. It's the only place we really have time to put vibrato at all. So I hope this gives you some better ideas of what to do here. Mark those extensions if you need to. Mark the bowings, ups and downs all throughout. I mark every other bar. I don't mark every bar. It's too much information. But you can try these little hairpins that I'm suggesting as well. Now, with the metronome marking that is suggested, and I'm not sure who makes these decisions, the idea is to get around that area of the tempo they suggest. Oh no, I think my metronome is going. Here we go. Batteries, internet, everything's going wrong today. Here we go. So this is about 110. It sounds something like this. So this is a faster tempo than I took. But as you see, as you go to the C string, you have to give it a little bit more bow and a little bit more oomph because it's a thicker string and it's very down low and it still needs to be very clean. It has to sound, they have to be equally clean. So you don't want some notes to be very easy to hear and some notes hard to hear. So it takes a lot more effort for us cellists on that lower C string with moving notes like that to make them come out cleanly. So if you're struggling with that, then I would suggest you play the whole thing slightly slower. As long as you can play it well and in tune and with a little musicianship in there, like I was kind of suggesting, to me that makes a better presentation than someone who's frantically trying to get it to a metronome marking that is just too hard to control the whole thing. You might be able to do the opening at 110 and then you get halfway down to the treble clef area and you go, oh no, this is too hard for me. Whatever you can do that treble clef area at should be probably your tempo that you pick from the start. So make sure that you, before you play your Allstate videos, warm up with that spot here. If that feels pretty good, then that's your tempo at the beginning. So I hope that gives you some ideas. I see a couple of you have entered the chat room now. So may I open it up to questions on any of the specific areas we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys who have just logged on, just so you know, we are recording this, and we'll have Miss Vellek's entire rundown of the etude and all the tips that she had available to you. So, since you missed the beginning part, we can always email it to you, and we'll email it out to everyone who missed or couldn't make it today. But if you have any general questions about the etude or anything that at all about playing cello that you want to ask Miss Vellek, we can open it up. You can just type it into the chat, and we can go from there. Anybody, feel free.
Got to be a question from somebody there. I can also answer questions if you have them on the scales that are required or arpeggios or any of that. If you have questions as well, I believe your grade level is doing C and D major, C and D minor scales, 3 octaves. Sometimes I have students with questions on the tempos because it says a quarter note equals 60. Yes, or you can do them separate or slurred with 2 eighth notes equals 120. It's the same tempo. So don't get confused with that. It's slow. It's not fast. I mean, basically we're listening for good tone, good intonation, good shifting, control of the bow so that it doesn't surge or go faster or slower anywhere. So if this is 60 for your scale, wow, that's slower than my grandmother walks. Okay, so 60 is a nice, easygoing walking tempo. And you see, even with that tempo, I don't need an entire bow to get a good sound. So don't feel that just because you have all this hair that it's necessary to use it all the time. We pick and choose how much bow we want to use for certain things. And I think it's more important to get a good tone. And if you're playing too much bow, you're going to get kind of fluffy. Can you hear that? I don't know. On Zoom, it's kind of hard to tell. But I prefer a more focused sound away off fingerboard. Now I'm putting vibrato at the end there just because I want to. But I don't expect any of you to do vibrato on scales. When I'm coaching, I prefer them not to use vibrato at all. I was just judging talent development program that the symphony also does, because I'm a member of that as well. And we told the students, you know, it says on the score sheet, vibrato on scales. And I said, forget it, don't do it. Because you can't really tell if the pitch is there or if your vibrato is just not steady. It's very hard for us to judge that. So I think make them pure, make them clean, as beautiful as you can. The cello is a nice instrument. You ask anybody, you know, on the street, you know, what instrument do you like to hear? A lot of times it's cello. And when they don't even know why they want to hear the cello, but it's got a very dark, very approachable, very warm sound. So that's what our goal is with our scales, is to make them sound like, if you've never heard a cello before, ever, what does it sound like? And I always find it interesting when I do classroom work and I play for preschoolers and toddlers, and I play anything. They're just like fascinated by the sound that comes out of this big box. That it's not a rough, noisy sound. It's actually a pretty sound, and they really grab onto that. So think about that when you're playing your scales.
Okay. Yeah. So last call for questions. So you all should be on mute. You're welcome to start your video, and if you have a question, you can wave and ask it, or you can just type it into the chat. I know. Yeah. So anybody. And of course, if you think of anything after the fact, you can always email us, and we'll forward it to Miss Vellek. And yeah, well, in that case, thank you so much, Miss Vellek, for all that wonderful information, and we will see you guys later. Just be on the lookout for some more information from ZTunes, and again, you can access this recording if you missed the first half of it. Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.